All right. So, hello, Jim. Please tell people about your film, which has a new 4K restoration, Girls Town.
Yes. The film came out originally in 1996. It was a very, very small independent film shot on 16 millimeter in about 15 days in the summer of 1995, which is 30 years ago now. It premiered at Sundance in 1996, won a couple of awards, which was really nice, and got distributed by October Films in theaters, and then was put out on VHS for people who remember VHS, and you know, and went its merry way. And then at a certain point, all the VHSs were gone. It had played on television a little bit on like IFC channel and things like that. But when streaming came around, no one put it online because the ownership of the film had changed from distributor to distributor, and it just kind of disappeared for the last 15 years. So I got the ownership back after 25 years, about 5 years ago, and did a restoration with a group called Indie Collect here in New York City. And the film looks beautiful. It's restored back to its original size, and it looks very, very good and sounds great. So we're putting it back out in the theaters, and pretty soon it'll be on Blu-ray and DVD as well.
Nice. Well, thanks for breaking it down the history of the rights and the transfers. It's good stuff. What do you think is enduring about the film?
Well, until very, very recently, when I kind of started to talk about it with interviewers and stuff, I thought it was relevant. We showed it 2 years ago to an audience that had a lot of younger people in it who had never seen it, and some people who had seen it when it came out. And the response was very, very positive. And the younger people in particular, I think what happens is now it plays almost like for people who haven't seen it, it plays like a period piece, which you don't think about it. I mean, it's not like I'm, 125 years old, but it's not like, corsets and parasols or anything, but it's like baggy jeans. It's 1990s hip hop, teenagers in a city. And so I think for young people today, that's fun to look at. And I think that the issues that come up in the film are possibly more relevant than they even were when the film came out. Because I think what I'm realizing now is that when you first watched the film, you thought, wow, this is very in the moment. But when you watch it now and you think this is really in the moment, but it's 30 years later. So there's a lot of things that haven't changed. There's a lot of things have changed for the good for women in society and girls, but there's some things that have gone backwards. So I think that it's going to be interesting to see how people view it when it comes out.
Cool. Was it fun to watch The Sopranos and see two of your Girls Town cast members featured?
Of course, yeah. I mean, it's always great to see, John Ventimiglia and Michael Imperioli were in Sopranos, which was great. Tom Gilroy, who plays Richard Helms, went on to do a lot of movie and television stuff. And of course, Lily was already appearing in a lot. But the other big thing is Ingenue Ellis Taylor, who made her film debut in Girls Town and now is a real superstar and well deserved as well because she is just an absolutely fantastic actor. So yeah, it's nice. Everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people went on to bigger and better things.
Cool. So you've worked on so many great shows. I was scrolling through the IMDb and seeing all the shows, but the one that really stuck out for me, because I'm a huge fan, is The Wire. So tell me about working on The Wire. What was that like?
It was great. I mean, I hadn't done a TV. That was my first TV show, and I had just finished my fourth movie, and my third and fourth movies were made with HBO. One was called Everyday People, and one was called Angel Rodriguez. And so the people at HBO kind of knew me at that point, and I got a call from the producer of The Wire, and she said, "Would you like to direct an episode this season?" And I said, "Yes, I would." So it was amazing. I went down to Baltimore. The DP on the show, Russell Lee Fine, during that season happened to have been my DP on Girls Town.
Oh,
He shot Girlstown. So that was really nice to have a known person there with me, working with me. And Eric Overman was on set as a writer, and I would go on to work with him on the Bosch pilot for Amazon. So, it doesn't get much better than The Wire. I think it's definitely in the top 5 TV shows of all time in my mind. And so to start off my TV career with that, I mean, it was hard to, it's a hard height to hit from the very beginning. So, but it was great. It was fantastic.
great. Do you remember what the episode was about?
Oh yeah, it was episode 4, season 4, and it was the season where they're in the high school with the kids, and Michael. It's kind of Michael's introductory. I think the first 3 episodes introduced one kid at a time, kind of, and then this was like Michael's episode, the young guy who was like working out at the boxing gym, taking care of his sibling at home because his mom was not really up for that, and starts off with the robbery of a poker game. Marlo's playing poker, and Omar comes in and robs the poker game. Actually, it really starts off with Marlo giving the stink eye to a security guy when he steals a lollipop in the grocery store. So I remember it well. I mean, people can recall
But
the
it's
whole
the other
thing.
way. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly, that great Marlowe line. And yeah, in fact, I went on to work with Jamie Hector in Bosch many, many years later, and a bunch of other actors who were in that show. It's a great big family, and it's really something else. I wish the show were still around.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, thanks for that. I appreciate it. Tell me about the wonderful soundtrack for Girls Town. You touched on that. Tell people about some of the musicians featured.
Well, let's see. The kind of central song in the whole movie is a song called UNITY by Queen Latifah. And I think it plays a couple times during the film. And it's kind of a perfect representation of the film in many ways in terms of the lyrics. And it's just got a great feel to it. There's songs by Salt and Peppa, Nefertiti, Roxanne Shante, Yo-Yo, PJ Harvey. It's not all just hip hop. PJ Harvey's in there, Luscious Jackson's in there, a group called Lamb. So it was, we wanted to assemble a soundtrack that was all female. And we did try to get a TLC song, and it was just out of our way. But when we played at Sundance, the film opened with "Something Wicked This Way Comes" by TLC, and we just couldn't license it when the film came out. So that changed. But we have a great song by Bahamadia, who's a rapper from Philadelphia instead. So uh, yeah, it came out on CD. I don't know if there are many of them lurking around out there on eBay or something like that, but I'm sure we'll start making playlists and getting it up online so that people can hear it, at home.
Nice. Yeah, a lot. It's basically like the cream of the crop of female rap at the time,
Yeah,
and of course now we have a lot of female rappers in the
yeah,
States doing it. So I think people will appreciate seeing that in Girls Town for
you like the
sure.
old school. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Um, do you remember being at Sundance with this film? You just mentioned that. What was that like for you?
I don't remember a thing. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. It was a trip, It was like I had been there without a film, but it was my first time there with a film, and it's a it's a crazy place. It got even crazier since then, but it's like you're in the mountains, it's snowy. Every hundreds of filmmakers are there, hundreds of films, parties, et cetera, et cetera. And on one hand, it's this great celebration of new cinema, which for filmmakers is fantastic because I met a lot of filmmakers who had films there, and some of them were first films also, and they kind of became my comrades in the years to come because it was almost like your freshman class, as a filmmaker. And that's super valuable. But then there's a business side of it too, and the fact that there's a competition, and who's going to win the competition, and which is a little bit, that's the more stressful part of it. And, I don't like the competition side. And it was weird because we won 2 awards. The next, like 4 years later, I went back there with our song, my second film, which in a lot of ways got a bigger response and some better critical acclaim, but we didn't win anything. And I was like, oh yeah, it feels to be here and have good screenings and everything. But it's not, it's a little bit of a crapshoot. So you can't take any of that stuff too seriously. But we were really lucky. I mean, we sold the film at the festival, and it came out, 6 months later. So it was a super great start for me. And I went there a bunch of times after with some films I directed and with some films that I produced. And haven't been there in quite a while yet, but at this point, but it was a great first outing for sure.
Nice. Yeah, I bet. And that was kind of like the that sort of 90s indie era you were a part
Yes,
of. The
yes, yeah,
it's like sort of we think of Miramax and
yep,
Steven Soderbergh and Quentin
yeah.
Tarantino, Kevin Smith. This fits in with that. So what do you think of that term, like the 90s movie?
Right.
Is that descriptive or is that just
I
surface
think it's
level?
very descriptive. I think it's
Yeah.
very descriptive. I mean, I think on certain levels, on some levels, they don't. There's not that many films being made that are like some of those films. um, because I think some filmmakers were people who were experienced, but the idea of making a film for a smaller budget and smaller circumstances was semi-new. I mean, Cassavetes was making independent films in the 70s. I mean, it's not and many others, it's not a completely new thing, but it was new for the public. And so some of those films had a little bit more of a normal filmmaking kind of style to them, but a more radical or interesting or more up to date like subject matter. And then some of them were just really differently made, you know. So, um, but I think that the big story of it was really about money and the fact that all of a sudden independent film became something that Joe Blow knew about, and directors became people who were on the cover of magazines rather than people who were behind the scenes. On a certain level, what it did is it started a bubble, and then at a certain point, the bubble burst, as they always do. So that was a big filmmaking bubble, and filmmakers got used to being able to go out and make a movie for $2 million or so. A small little movie. I mean, Girls Town cost $70,000 to make. But and actually, my next film, Our Song, cost only a little bit more than. But other people who came out of there and got these deals with these companies, yeah, they were making bigger movies. They didn't always do that well, or especially after time. Sometimes they did. And then, that, you know, the industry kind of shifted. And for a lot of people who got used to being able to make those films, they were, all of a sudden like not able to. TV, I think, is is going through that same thing right now where you know, the 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 HBO era started the quality uptick, and then AMC joined in and Netflix came along. But then there was a glut. There's been a big glut of films and it was just like too much. And then the strike came a couple of years ago and now there's less stuff being made, and the stuff being made is either, $100 million shows or network procedurals or whatever. It's very weird. So, you know, it's odd because things go up and down and in and out. But I think it was definitely a very precious time. I have to say, for small little art independent films, now is a fantastic time, in my opinion, for people who can and know how to make films on a smaller level. Like in New York City, on a given day, you could go see a film at IFC, Film Forum, Metrograph, The Quad, Roxy Cinema, Cinema Village, MoMA, Museum. Like it's countless places, and they're playing older films and newer films. They're playing 4-hour movies. They're playing, $100,000 movies. I forgot to mention Anthology Film Archives also, which, is like going to film school. So, I think on a lot of levels, it's a good time for the kind of movies that were coming out at that time 30 years 25, 30 years ago, actually.
Well, that's encouraging.
Yeah,
We need some hope sometimes.
I'm
Yeah,
trying.
I appreciate that. Do you have a favorite scene or line from Girls Town?
Oh, wow. I'd have to think about that a little. I think my
Sure.
favorite scene for sure is there's a very key scene, maybe 10, 15 minutes into the film where I don't want to do any spoilers, but something bad has happened and three of the characters are alone and are sitting in a basement talking and we dolly a room and I think it's in probably a 3 minute long shot that's uninterrupted. Uh, Very heavy conversation that's going on. I just think it's in a very arresting scene. It shows the quality that came out of us doing an improvisation workshop with the actors before we made the film, and it's just it's people talking, uh, which for me is and thinking and listening and for me, that's something that I always want to see on screen, like something that's really deep and that you see how a conversation is affecting people in real time. So that's my fave, I think.
Cool. Cool. All right. Do you have some favorite 90s movies? Like two or three, maybe, that jump to mind?
Ooh, ooh, ooh. I love Ira Sachs's film, The Delta. It's his very fast film, for his very first film, he called Passages, that I also loved, but The Delta's great. Um, I love Nancy Savoca's Dogfight and Household Saints. That's a 90s, those are 90s films. Um, who were we there with? I'm trying to think of who was at the festival when we were there. A lot of documentaries from that time. Personal Belongings by Steve Bognar. Um, uh, and let me try to think of one more.
Sure.
Um, I can't.
Okay.
If I had that question ahead of time, I would have had a great list for you. But that's
Right,
what
right.
comes to mind.
That's
Um,
okay.
yeah.
Are you sure?
Well, Daughters of the Dust by Julie Dash. I'm not sure if that was 90s. It might have been late 80s, but also everything Spike was making in the 90s was pretty great. I would say those. I would add those two things to the list.
Okay, deal. Great. Thank you. Perfect. Okay. Jim, thanks so much for your time. Is there anything else
Thank
you,
you.
you would like to say about your film Girls Town before I let you go?
It's opening on January 17th in New York City at IFC Center. It will go around the country to smaller art cinemas for the rest of the year, come out in Blu-ray and DVD next year. And we have an Instagram page at Girlstown Movie, and Film Movement is the distributor, so you can see more information about it on their sites too.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.